Hey,
Hello.
hello, everybody, and welcome to It's a B2B Content Thing, Part 2. We survived our first LinkedIn Live last month, and we're back for more because we enjoyed it so much. And I'm gonna quickly get us all to introduce ourselves, just in case people don't know who we are. I'm Stacy Meadwell, former property journalist turned content creator for the B2B built environment sector. Ayo?
So I'm Ayo Abbas. I'm a built environment marketing consultant. And I work with architects and engineers and all those types of people.
Hi, I was waiting for the intro, Stacey.
Sorry.
Hi, I'm Emma. And for those that don't know me already, I'm a communication consultant working predominantly with built environment companies.
Cool. So, as I said, we survived our first LinkedIn Live last month, and the topic for this session is how to talk about going green. It's an absolutely massive topic, and we could talk about it for a very long time, but we're not going to do that. The format for the session is 15 minutes. There's 3 of us, 3 questions, and then we're going to throw it open to our audience to ask questions if you've got a question. And you can do that via the StreamYard. If you're logged into StreamYard, that's right, isn't it, Ayo? If you're logged into StreamYard.
Do you know what? I think you can just do it via LinkedIn and it still shows up. Because look, we can see Ruth's come on board and Emma's come on board. You see those?
No, I can't because I haven't got LinkedIn open. So you'll be in charge. You will be in charge of the questions. But anyway, do submit your questions either via LinkedIn or via StreamYard, and we'll pick them up and we'll do our best to answer them. And this is being recorded, and we will be putting out the video of the recording afterwards. So if you want to do a catch up, or if you know anybody that is missing it and would find it interesting, then do pass it on, and we'll put some links and stuff in the comments on StreamYard and on LinkedIn so people can find it. So let's kick off with the first question, which I think is yours, Ayo.
Yes, and so it is. So question number 1, which is, why do businesses need to communicate their sustainability strategy? So who's
over to you, Emma? Yeah,
shall I go first?
Emma, you go first on that one.
I think there's a very obvious reason, isn't there? Which is if you're doing something amazing, then you want to tell everybody about it. So that's the first thing, really. I think also as consumers and buyers in B2B in particular, I think we're increasingly looking for connections to sustainable products and services. I know I am on a personal level as well, and I'm seeing more of this everywhere, as I'm sure we all are. And in fact, I had a guest on the podcast last week, and she works with startup companies finding investment for them, and she was saying there's an increasing amount of companies that are looking for investments in sustainable green, or companies with green credentials, let's call them. So yeah. I think we'll see more of this. I think the flip side to that is that as consumers and buyers, we're wary, unfortunately. So it's important that we communicate all the details and facts of what we're doing. If you're going to communicate a sustainability strategy, it has to be. It's really hard for people to sort between the wheat and the chaff, between those that are saying one thing and companies saying another thing. So I think it's really important to be clear.
Brilliant.
Definitely. Sorry, go on, Ayo.
I was just going to say, in my kind of opinion, I was kind of like, well, it's right for the planet, but also it's starting to make, I guess it's more and more business sense in terms of it's the right thing to do as well. So I think there's that whole kind of thing of actually, that's where we're moving towards. And I think as well, there's that whole kind of government swell as well in terms of forcing people's hands. So, every company by 2023, which was announced earlier, that, you have to have detailed public plans about how you're going to reach, net zero and all that kind of stuff. So I kind of think all of that stuff is kind of getting us towards a thing whereby people are going to have to openly say what they're doing. And I kind of think in terms of sustainability strategy and sustainability overall, if it's done well, it's a differentiator. If it's done badly, it's going to damage your business. So that's kind of where we're heading to.
I completely agree. And I think there's a people are far more savvy now, and there is a lot more regulation in place and coming down the line. So it's an imperative to actually follow the legislation and regulations, but also be ahead of it, and then communicate that you are doing that to your customers, clients, and your audience. And people are getting much more savvy about greenwashing, and being able to, there's a lot of skepticism about what businesses are doing and not doing. And so I think it's just increasingly important to talk about what you are doing and your strategy. I'm on the second question, so let's crack straight on with that one.
Can I just add something there, Stacey? Sorry, I think it's we're assuming that people have one, aren't we, a little bit there? And I think there's always been a bit of a carrot to do it, hasn't there? For the reason, probably the reasons we've mentioned, but the stick is now coming in it much more so, as it should be. And there's a challenge for communicators, I think, to work through that with businesses they're working with or in, for sure. So there's going to be increased pressure, I think, on teams to do something, and therefore they want to do the right thing. So I think it's flipping a little bit.
No, that's a really good point. And sorry, I was going to say that leads us into our second question, but you say what you want.
I was just literally going to say also Gen Z, young people, they are so savvy when it comes to green, and we can't ignore that. It's like I'm 44, but I know I can't ignore it. I've got a 6-year-old who sits there and tells me to switch off lights and do all this stuff all the time. So
that's great.
No, it really does. But it really is that thing that we're all gonna, they're going to expect way more, and we're kind of saying it's up to young people to clean it up.
Definitely. So let's move on to our second question, which Emma has very nicely kind of segued us into, is where does open and transparent communications leave us as communicators? Emma, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, I can do. I think there's a couple of big things for me, for my corner of the world, and it's about trust and reputation management, really. And as you've already mentioned, Stacey, greenwashing, whether that's intentional or unintentional, it can lead to a lack of trust, both from a consumer point of view and a supply chain point of view. And it's a sort of reputational issue that will affect the bottom line eventually. It's not just about best practice in communications here. It's about making sure that what we're selling and what we're telling people we're selling are aligned, really, in its simplest terms. So as we said, we're more savvy as consumers, and I think it does leave us open. I as communicators, I think it does, and I think that at the moment there's probably very little in terms of where we can lean on, as recourse for that. We're reliant on experts to provide us with information, especially we all work in the built environment, don't we? So, we're engineers, technical people, constructing products, and we're on the hook for make comms that stuff, and we can be on the hook for that. So I think there's a few things there, really, but we need a really sort of robust system to sense check, I think, in our everyday planning, and that I think it can be more tricky in B2B as well, because quite often there's business development teams, or events are a big part of getting your message out there, and everyone can have a slightly different opinion about things. So it's not just all digital, which you can control slightly more when it's going out. In-person events can be attended by anybody. So making sure everyone is on message and having some checks and balances around that, facts and figures in particular, is going to be ever more important, as is a system to sort of spot when something might not be quite right.
Ayo?
I think in a way, this kind of open and transparent communications, it leaves us as communicators in a harder position, because I think we've also got, a duty of care as professionals, and we can't just push out comms if they're ambiguous and potentially untrue. And I think that's going to be the big challenge, is actually we need to push back and go, do you have more information? Is this actually true? And actually ask those complex questions and those difficult questions. And I think, especially for people starting off in our sector, I think that's going to be really hard to do, because I think it's having the confidence and the knowledge to know, are we really the first in this? are there other people doing this? And actually, you know, I mean, a lot of what I'm doing when I'm working with major engineering firms at the moment is fact checking. We're writing documents, and then I have to go back and go, have you got evidence of this? Is that right? Is that correct? And that's before it goes out. And literally I can fact check with like 10 people for one piece of comms. So I think that's the level of scrutiny, and that's kind of what we're all going to have to do, is make sure that, you know, what we're putting out is factually correct and true and has the right evidence. And I think that's what we're going to have to do as communicators. So I think
the evidence is the evidence is the important thing, isn't it? It's not just trusting perhaps what we're given is potentially the right thing. There's a personal kind of, like you say, ethical code you've got to stand behind, sort of, you know, trust your instincts a bit with it, but also make sure you've got, like you say, checks and balances for that evidence.
Which is, you know, comes back to the point about greenwashing and actually being able to demonstrate and back up what you are saying and what you are doing, and show that you are, you know, making genuine move to net zero. You know, and it's the same with I would say it's the same with any content, and it's something that I do regardless of whether it's about climate related topics, is, you know, always fact check, always, you know, fight if I can, is there evidence to back up this point. And I just think it's even more important with stuff around climate change, because as we said right at the very start, people are savvy and they will see through it if there isn't that sort of, you know, if there isn't that robust kind of evidence to support what you're trying to say. Let's move on to the final question, which is yours, Emma, I believe.
Yeah, I think it is. So how can we make comms around sustainability simpler? Do you want to start with that, Ayo?
I think for me, I kind of think we have to kind of explain what we're talking about, because I kind of think there's so many terms: carbon neutral, carbon this, there's so much offsetting, whatever you're talking about. In some ways you have to kind of make a statement on what you're talking about, but actually explain what it means to you and the piece that you're writing and what you're communicating, because I think there's so much confusion, there's so much but yeah, and I kind of think that's the kind of the key things, is actually making it as clear as possible and as simple as possible. But then I also think you also have to kind of ask the, you know, like you do in bid writing, for example, ask about so what does this mean for consumers? So what does it mean to the reader? And actually really delve down into it, because I kind of think at the moment, you know, people, like some of the comments are saying, people are actually starting to turn off from the green message, you know, and things like that. And I think we have to find a way to connect people to it. And a lot of that is going to be, so what does it mean for you as a person? What does it mean for you as a business? And actually really kind of drilling down into that, so that people can turn around and go, actually, I get it now. This is why this matters to me. It's not just some big, you know, far away thing in 20 years time that I don't need to think about right now or do anything about. I think we need to do that if we want people to A, care, but B, also if we want people to take action, which is what we want right now, isn't it?
It's a really important point you made about jargon. Somebody, I can't remember who it was, but somebody posted on LinkedIn this week a list to a glossary of climate related terms. And, you know, I like to think that I'm fairly savvy because I write about a lot of this stuff. But actually, there was quite a lot on there. I thought, oh, that wasn't quite what I thought it meant. Yeah. And I think it's really important not to assume that that you know, or B, that your audience know what you are talking about. And, you know, it's like with any communications, any content, you need to understand, you need to write for that particular audience and write in a language and in a way that they understand clearly. So, you know, if you're writing for your peers that have the same level of technical knowledge, then I think, yes, you can be a bit more technical. But if you're not, don't assume that people will know what all these terms mean. And, you know, clarity is so important in this.
Definitely. Absolutely. I agree with both of you, actually. I suppose, conscious of time, but I'd probably add into that. There's a couple of things coming down the line that I think that might help with that. We work in the built environment. On the construction product side, there's something called the code, Code for Construction Product Information coming down the line. And the reason that's interesting is it's for manufacturers. So it's really with the onus being on the manufacturers. But in terms of communicating that information, there are 5 acid tests, as they call it, around the information and making sure that it's clear. And it's got to be clear, accurate, up to date, accessible, and unambiguous. And I think I think regardless of what sector you work in, actually, that's a really, really good set of principles to work to. And if it doesn't feel right on any of those counts, question it. And, as you said, Ayo, questioning is hard, we all feel comfortable doing it and saying, well, why? Why is that? You've got to get your journalist head on, Stacey, haven't you?
Absolutely.
What's the point? Why are we saying this? Why have we got to say this? But on the flip side, we can make things too simple. Part of our job is to make things simpler, isn't it? Part of our job is to take this huge amount of information and make it accessible and into information people can act on. And it's horribly hard. It's hard. I don't have the answer. But I think if we can have some sort of checks and balances on those 5 tests once we've written it, the unambiguous one in particular, I think, and is it still accurate? We're not going to go far wrong, are we? I think that's a pretty simple. I'll pop those in the links underneath the video today. But
and
sorry, go on.
It's also important for us to ask if you don't understand, actually, ask what people mean by something, because it's very easy to take what people say and tell you, and just sort of take it, say, okay, I don't really understand what that means, but there we go. And it's because it's a learning process for everybody. It's a learning process for the entire industry, whether regardless of what you do. So it's important to make sure that you understand totally. it, and just ask if you don't.
There's one more thing coming down the line, Stacey. Can I just mention it was released? It was published by the government this week as well, and it's about the accuracy of environmental claims. So there's now recourse for consumers to complain on factual inaccuracy with regards to environmental claims. So that is, we're talking about right back at the beginning about there being more of a stick now, and people will start to make their voice heard a lot more, I think, rather than just grumbling in the background going, well, that sounds a bit unambiguous. I think it's going to be much more policed, if that's the right word. And there's, as it should be, there are more routes for us to be able to complain about it as consumers.
Absolutely. Right. Well, that's just slightly more than 15 minutes from us. So thank you to everybody who's been submitting questions and comments. It's lovely. There's loads here. So we'll try and get through as many as we can, but we may have to kind of call a stop on it. And if there is a question we don't get to, maybe we can do that off. We can answer it some other way. Okay. So Andrew Kinsey, do you think business need to have a sustainability strategy and communicate it, because if they don't, they won't have a business in the future, which is kind of quite a broad business question. I would say it's I think you've got to, because all businesses have got to meet a net zero, and that affects everybody. A lot of the things that people don't realize about is that if you've got a website, it's got a carbon footprint. So even if you're an online business, you have a carbon footprint. So there's all these areas that you need to think about as a business. And so everybody is on the same journey. So I would say, you've got to, would be my humble opinion on that one.
I was gonna say,
yeah, I agree.
Comms experts, we're all going to say yes.
Well, I think you should have one if it can be all the things, you can make it unambiguous, accurate, clear, correct, factual, and it means something. But yes, I think you're saying our business is going to go out of business if they don't have one. And I think eventually people will choose to do business with more and more with more sustainable businesses and businesses with green credentials, and that will have a knock-on effect down the supply chain. So the code for construction, I'm not calling it the right thing, I will put it in the link, that actually is about manufacturers and supply chain, and everyone in that supply chain is culpable. So if you sign up to the code, which hopefully lots of businesses will, yes, they will need to have some sort of sustainability strategy to prove that they can sign up to and be part of that code.
Another question from Andrew. Thank you for all your questions, and this is quite a long one. Here we go. So as professional marketers and communicators, do you have any tips on how to translate technical details such as tons of carbon, which you can't see, touch, taste, smell, into something people can relate to? Do you have any views on the use of standards to demonstrate credibility? Don't know whether you guys have any thoughts on that.
So I guess like the translating something into something people can relate to. Like I know it's used probably too much, this example, but you know, like when people say it's the size of 50 buses or X amount of football pitches, it's that kind of thing of actually you can visualize that and how big that is or how much it takes. And I kind of think that kind of visualization is one way to bring it to life. I think it's actually a very good way to bring it to life, because I think otherwise it's like equating it to something else that I do know the size of or something like that. I kind of think that's what we have to do, because especially since there's such huge numbers to get to grips with and things like that. But I think that kind of thing, animations, visuals, any way you can kind of visualize it and bring it to life, and it stops it being a number.
I saw a really good example of that. And it was about a piece I was writing about data centers, and somebody there was a stat that we found. Somebody done some research, and the stat was that if you binged watched Bridgerton over the Christmas last year, it was equivalent of boiling your kettle 6 times. And I just thought that is a really nice way of putting it. Was a really nice way of putting it, because, you know, it showcases what the impact is. You know, you think you're doing, you know, just sitting there watching Netflix, and actually it was a really good way of sort of demonstrating the impact that your activity has. So, which comes back to what you were saying, Ayo, about actually having those little sort of illustrative points to sort of demonstrate to really bring home kind of in a much more tangible way what the impact is.
I'm now thinking of like things with like the Duke.
I would just add to that. I would add to that as well in terms of formats. You know, some people don't absorb it. Everyone absorbs information in different ways. So yes, visuals great. I would also consider audio. You know, talking about someone talking. I mean, think about the David Attenborough voice in our heads. It's in all of our heads. You know, there's something about when he talks about with passion about the environment that really resonates. So I wouldn't discount audio. It doesn't have to be clever graphics all the time. It just has to be explained really well.
Yeah.
And in bite-sized chunks that people can understand. And sometimes people hearing the words is actually better than them seeing it on a screen or whatever.
I mean, sometimes I find that getting someone to explain something just in conversation is a great inroad, because people will often explain something much more simply when they're talking to somebody,
exactly,
as opposed
Stacey.
to like trying to kind of write it down, you know. And I've done some work around. I was trying to work on a piece that someone had written, and I didn't quite understand what they were trying to say. So I just got them to tell me the story, and it's like, got it. I know exactly what you're trying to say here, and it was just then a case of changing it. So that's an approach I would take. We've got another question from Andrew. Andrew, isn't a sponsor. We haven't paid him to ask all these questions. Really appreciate.
Do you know Andrew? I used to work with him at Mace.
Oh, right. Oh no, I've lost the question. Where's it?
Can I just respond to Mark Southgate just quickly? Mark,
Oh, cool.
I will put them below the video, the 5 points. But just again, they are clear, accurate, up to date, accessible, and unambiguous. So I just saw Mark's comment there.
There you go.
Cool.
I did that. I'm getting there.
So there's so many things coming in. I'm kind of
okay. So we've got the
Go on.
second part of Andrew's question was: do you have any views on the use of standards to demonstrate credibility?
Are we talking about things like BREEAM and that sort of stuff? Is that those sort of environmental standards? Is that what you're referring to, Andrew? Those sort of things.
I think he's perhaps talking about having some standards people understand. So
right, okay.
Yeah. So how do we make them easier to understand? I think, because I'm looking at a separate note from him, comment about top trumps. So I'm thinking that's where it was going. I might be wrong.
I have found your third question, Andrew, now, which is the word sustainability overused and devalued these days?
Yes.
And actually, this resonates, because we had a conversation about when we were trying to come up with a title for this talk, which was really difficult. We had we had that same issue, is what do we, and actually I think Emma, it was you that vetoed sustainability. You said, let's just get rid of that, which was a great idea. So that's what we took. So yeah, I completely agree. I think it is overused, and it can, I think it's a bit sort of vague as well in terms of what it actually means.
Well, a footpath, or you know, in planning, I work with you know, some planning-led projects, and the word sustainability is used everywhere. You know, even on footpaths. So, how can a footpath be sustainable? Sustainable transport methods on foot?
Because you're walking.
It's just, you know, because you're walking, and I get it. But do we need to use the word sustainable? Yes, it's overused. I think it should be in room 101, actually. I'm going to go that far. And then reintroduced when we all know a bit more about what's going on.
Actually, I guess it's back to that point, though. If you're going to use the word sustainability, then explain what you mean by it. Because again, it's that whole thing, isn't it? And actually, if you're going to use that, you may as well just use the words you're going to use to explain it anyway, and just go with that. But that's basically it, isn't it? It's like you use a term, explain what it is. But yeah, I think sustainability is used to death, and everyone's fed up with it. So, and plus, it's hard to spell.
Yeah. I'm going to be strict now, because we're coming up to nearly the end of 15 minutes of Q&A, and I don't want to kind of take up, you know, because we could be here all afternoon talking about this, because it's such a big topic. So I'm going to ask one final question from Phil Grant. Hi, Phil. Hello, Phil. Should we be changing sorry, people won't know. Well, some people might know why we're laughing. Should we be changing the narrative to be more positive, getting people to understand the great stuff from sustainability rather than the doom and gloom of not doing it? I would say yes to that. I think it's a bit of both, really. And I think people can get very depressed about when, you know, and switch off from all the doom and gloom. I know I do. You know, I found the whole this week, particularly with COP, a little bit overwhelming, and I've kind of taken a step back from it. So, and I find myself looking for those positive stuff, the good stuff that's happening. So, I think you need to kind of, obviously, you know, there needs to be a sense of urgency, but it needs to be kind of balanced with you know, the good stuff that's happening.
Yeah, I mean, the sense of urgency is great, and you know, the shock tactics, but if you fundamentally don't know, we know where you need to be, but you have absolutely no idea or a roadmap of how to get there, it's lost, isn't it? Because all it does is cause stress and anxiety. So and non-action. So all the things we've talked about today, you know, Andrew, with standards and explaining things better and making it easier for people to create a roadmap for how they can get their businesses to net zero, and a really good government campaign. You know, when government campaigns are good, they are good. You know, they do invest a lot of money in them, and they do reach a lot of people. And, you know, they're one of the only organisations that can reach that many people. So I think we'll see more coming out from government in the coming months and definitely years around this, in terms of helping people understand what they can do.
And I mean, and a key thing I just want to add in, and something we haven't touched upon yet, but this is a collective journey, and the solution is a collective one. You know, we can't. No one organisation can do this on their own, and there's huge value in sharing information about what you are doing. And actually, I was having a conversation with somebody on LinkedIn this morning about, you know, the importance of the property industry sharing data, and not just talking about what has gone right, but also about what has gone wrong, so we can all learn from it and move forward and make sure that we you know, we get to where we need to go, and sort of, you know, keeping everything kind of, you know, being open and honest and transparent about everything is just hugely beneficial, because this is a problem that affects everybody. It's not, you know, it's not sort of, it's going to affect, you know, some people more than others. It affects everybody. And the only way we'll get to where we need to go is if we share information and be open and transparent about what we are doing, what's worked, what's not worked. And there's, you know, there's a lot to communicate. You know, there's a lot to communicate there. Sorry, Ayo, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I'm just flashing comments. I'm enjoying doing this.
Ayo has worked out how to use StreamYard, and it's brilliant. Okay, I'm gonna wrap up because we've had half an hour now. I really hope you have found that useful, interesting, and we're going to be putting the recording out. So if you have missed it, you want to replay, or you know somebody that would like to find it useful to see it, then do look out for the video. Thank you to everybody that has been watching live. Thank you to everybody that has submitted a comment and a question. Slightly overwhelmed by the response. It's wonderful. And we will be back. We haven't decided what we're going to be talking about for the next one, but we will be back for another It's a B2B Comms Thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Ideas on what we should be talking about, feel free to share that in comments as well, and we'll take a look on LinkedIn.
Absolutely.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. And you'll find us all again on LinkedIn. So connect with us there.
Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.
Yeah. Bye.